What was one of the compounds that you?
Well, I know cadmium, beryllium, formaldehyde.
Yeah. So they're still.
There are
Yeah.
5 or 6 others. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
No. I was just curious about some examples.
Yeah. Most of them were something to do with environmental or occupational exposures.
Now, I remember that when you were the head of the Institute of Environmental Studies, there was a little house on Pittsburgh, wasn't there?
Right.
Remember the address?
No, but it was right behind, adjacent to the school's parking lot, when we used to be able to.
When we had a parking lot.
place.
So it's not across from the credit union. Is
Yeah.
that where the school social work is now, I guess,
Oh,
or
wow.
something?
Huh.
And then you were out at the Frank Porter Graham trailers, weren't you? For
Not
years?
Frank Porter Graham, right, the trailers that were next to the power plant.
Yeah.
Yes, our Oak Ridge study was housed there we were there for about 2 years.
Only 2 years that you were out there? Because I seem to remember going there and there was this little wooden bridge
Yeah.
from building to building.
Yeah, right. And you kind of duck your head to get through the doorway.
Was it just 2 years that you were there? My goodness.
2 years. Then they moved us up into the NCNB, National Bank building on Franklin Street.
Uh-huh.
And we were there for about 2 or 3 years. And then this building became available.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was about,
This building opened in about 90 or 91, I think.
yeah, 1990, 91.
And in the 70s when you first came, in 74, do you remember where your office was?
My office, let's see, I was in that little building because I still was with the Institute for Environmental Studies.
Oh, right,
So I was
okay.
in a little house.
So did you come to
Pittsburgh Street.
UNC before you came to Epi? I mean, you mentioned that
I
Dan
came-
Oken recruited you.
Well, I came with a joint appointment in environmental science and in epidemiology.
So when you went to that house, that was when you were in Epi as well?
That's when I was
see.
in Epi.
Okay.
That's where my office was at that time. And I was there until 1979. I guess that's when I started to think about the sabbatical, when Michelle approached me about the sabbatical, and then I left in 1980. And then I came back. We went to the trailer for a year or so.
For the Oak Ridge study.
Yeah, with the Oak Ridge study.
And was Betsy Seagroves your secretary the whole time?
She was secretary, right from my start in 1974. She and I started together in January 1974.
And she's
In fact,
still here.
I interviewed her and several other candidates, but she had some nice training that appealed to me, and so I was very fortunate to get Betsy Seagrove. She was a very dedicated person, and she was together with me all the way until about 1995, 94, 95. 96, in fact, when I was no longer, I was interim chair of the department from 1993 to 1996. Barbara Holka finished her 10-year stint in 1993. And then 1996, David Savitz became chair.
Yeah, I remember we had a search
We had a
in
search.
93 when Barbara was completing her term.
Yeah.
And Moises Sklo was one of the people who just gave, as you know, Moises Sklo just gave the John Castle lecture. So Moises Sklo was one of the people in the search who I think was going to be offered the position. But something happened. I think his mother became ill in Brazil, and so he had to take himself out of the running. And the other candidates included Tom Kepsel.
Yeah, and
But-
Jonathan from Johns Hopkins.
Salmon.
John.
Was he in
Samet.
that pool? I don't remember
He
his
was
being in that one.
Yes.
But Tom Kepsel got the position out in Seattle at University of Washington, so he
That's
wasn't
right.
available.
That's right.
And I'm blocking on her name, the the NCI scientist who's very prominent, and
Right.
she was one of the other candidates, but I think she was pregnant.
She was pregnant.
About to deliver. So you ended up becoming chair. But as I recall, you weren't just interim, that Michelle said you should be the chair for 3 years.
Yeah, but it was agreed upon, not for
To be 3.
a full term.
Yeah, because hadn't you already kind of retired? Partly you were part-time by then, or?
Yeah, I was, that's right. I think I was 75% time at that point.
It seems a little unfair, that you were actually facing that, and all of a sudden you were chair.
And I came back 100%.
Exactly. And then after that, when David Savage became chair, weren't you in charge of the core courses for the school? Was that when that happened?
Not the core, I was in charge for the EPI 160 courses, not only on campus but off campus.
But also,
Lorraine and I together.
Right, but also there was something for the core courses in general. There was, I thought you were kind of like a coordinating person.
No,
as
no,
well?
we just had groups meeting to plan how to develop the core courses, especially for the off-campus programs.
Uh-huh.
We had meetings, with health policy, health behavior, and all of the others. And in fact, example that Lorraine established on, putting online courses was very valuable to that group.
And that was after you were chair, as far as you remember?
It started when I was chair, but when the development of it really proceeded apace after I was finished being chair.
Yeah, they needed better internet than they had at the beginning.
So Carl, what do you think were some of the most significant contributions of the department or developments that happened in the department?
Well, it's hard to pin down one is outstanding. There were many, I thought, that were, real contributions. Obviously, the cardiovascular program made some excellent contributions through their studies. We had, at one point, a fairly strong social epidemiology program with Sherman James, Bert Kaplan, Cecil Sloan, John Castle.
Ed Wagner
And
also was,
And-
Ed Wagner, I
Ed
think, was
Wagner,
involved
yes,
too.
yes.
And Alta Roller.
And Altai Roller and Gerardo, yeah. I mean, they didn't call it social, they called themselves cardiovascular, but yes, they were doing social.
Yeah.
And David Jenkins, were you here when David
He
Jenkins
was here just for, as I recall, about a year or so
when you came?
when I came, yes.
And Steve Zazansky, did you know him also?
Steve was, I think, left just about the time I came.
Mm-hmm. I had an email exchange with him a number of years ago, and it reminds me I should try to get back in touch and see if he can contribute some to this history.
Were there other accomplishments or papers or research that you thought were important, noteworthy?
I can't, cite any ones in particular now. It's funny, when you're here in the midst of it, you could be thinking of it. I've been gone now for about 12 years, and that's fading into the distance.
What about departmental social life?
Well, we always had, the departmental picnics that I think were quite well attended. But I was not much involved with the student activity and the social part of it. So I don't really have much to say about that.
Are there people that you think of as champions for the department? People who were not in the department, but
Yeah.
deans, and of course Michelle Ibrahim was a champion, but...
Well, again, I think the people in the School of Medicine that I knew were Tim Carey and I can't remember, Harris.
Russ Harris?
Russ, Russ Harris, were the ones who really wanted epidemiology to be more incorporated in physicians' training. And they're the ones who really pushed for clinical epidemiology to become a strong part of our department. And that's when they started to think about offering degrees in clinical epidemiology, a master's degree in clinical epidemiology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've had quite a few people have come through the department, and that's largely because of their interest in it.
Well, now we have this Masters of Science in Clinical Research
Right.
that Bill Miller has been heading up. That's actually quite large, going on for a number of years already. Anybody, I mean, were there vice chancellors or chancellors or?
Well, Cecil Sheps was vice chancellor when I came, and he was a great supporter of the Institute for Environmental Studies.
Mm-hmm.
But after he left, we lost that support. We didn't have a person who really was strongly pushing for it. Chris Fordham became vice chancellor after that.
Mm-hmm.
Chris was more strongly oriented towards medicine, towards medical science,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Cecil Sheps, I think, had an appreciation for public health and for environmental issues. Can you shut that off for a minute? I have to
Yeah,
stand up.
sure.
Because I'm getting